Welcome to the collapse. And that's not what you think. So, this whole conversation is going to be a perspective shift because that is what I feel my whole purpose is to take something that we feel to be conditional or have some sort of polarity in it and collapse it. Bring it into a unified field of a new understanding, a higher way of understanding what that truly means. So, today we are going to talk about, yes, the collapse. Polarity, 3D versus the 5D, and everything in between. And we are going to take these two dualistic ways of seeing the world and bringing them into this one space so that we can see a higher, deeper truth. There's so much of the spiritual conversations that you see everywhere that is 3D versus 5D, where it frames this whole war is on polarity, where we escape the 3D experience to ascend to a fifth dimensional space. Woven through that conversation, there is the lore of the Orion Wars. These cosmic battles that I feel reverberate through our systems right now. And through that, it is projecting onto our experience here, where it is us versus our density, where it is grief versus joy, where it is our heaviness versus our lightness. And that's kind of what we've been conditioned to believe here, is that it is a us versus them, when really it is just well, there is no versus. It is just you recognizing you in all of your dimensional aspects of self and bringing them into a unified field to express in this physical body, to express in this human experience. And I feel like through the whole journey that brought us here into this moment, we have been trying to shed ourselves over and over and over, which really is just an unlearning, a deconditioning, so that we can rise into a higher light. But what I find is the looping part, where we can get caught up in this healing pattern, is where we are on this wheel, like the hamster wheel over here that my hamster runs on. Um, we get caught up in that loop of thinking that we have to constantly heal ourselves because we're feeling too human. We feel too much of emotions, but that is also your gift. So within this conversation, I'm really hoping that you understand that your depth of feeling is not something to heal from, but learn how to integrate it with your light. And that way, it's kind of like a battery on a car or a battery just in general. You're needing a negative polarity as much as a positive polarity to have a full charge, to be able to create something new, to be able to keep running, to be at your full capacity, especially here within this experience. Because I feel like for the longest time, like us as deep empaths, star seeds, or light workers, whatever you want to call yourself or identify yourself as, in which it's fine to identify yourself as any of these, as long as it's not doing a light worker, starseed versus human, because you are both. And that is also a part of this conversation where I want to show you, in a sense of, it's not you versus NPCs, or you versus humans that just don't get it, or you versus normies, you versus anything, but understanding how, which honestly, it's all kind of tied together in this multiple, deeply complex, where I feel like the Orion Wars have been projected onto this experience, which I feel like Orion is deeply, if their superpower is understanding the power of polarity. And I have a video that I made in season 2 where it talks about the different energies, the different frequencies of the different consciousness of of, well, I'll say galactic beings. So, like, for instance, like Arcturus, Sirius, Orions, Andromedans, the Lyrans, Anunnaki, all of these different galactic beings. I feel like as like my superpower, or what I have found to be like a gift or ability, is learning how to translate those energies into tangible human experiences, similar to like astrologers who can take like, ooh, Mercury is in retrograde. What does this mean for you? Or, ooh, what Saturn is in Aries. What does that mean for you? Or learning of all of these different planetary placements and reading the energy of them, of how it's going to maybe push you or what influence it could have upon you. So I'm similar. It's not like astrology, or I guess it could be astrology, but with the stars, the different placement within the stars of yourself, within your soul constellation. Because I feel like that's honestly what it is. Like your natal chart is like your own personal constellation that kind of shows you who you are, kind of like Orion in the sky. It is like this whole body of stars, like I don't know, millions, probably billions of stars within this constellation of the, because it's massive, right? There's like so many different aspects of this constellation, which I find that's probably why it is like this master of polarity, because it has and holds so much depth, and also it's this greatness of so much light. It has the ability to hold both ends of the spectrum, play them out, and how we feel it and view it in a lower sense, not lesser sense, but lower sense of understanding, is a war where because the lower we get in dimensional planes of existence, the more separate we are, only because of the lack of memory. So it's like, yes, the further away from the light you get doesn't mean that you're not just as light. It's your memory of it kind of fades. It's like the further away from the light, the more that it fades away, but it doesn't really truly. I think you understand what I'm trying to say, because that's the whole point of this experience, is remembering who we are. And once we remember who we are, we transcend separation, that we're outside of the light, but we're in this, maybe this dark space of a void, which is just potential for your light to shine in a new way, in its own creative, unique expression. So what I feel like, for example, with Orion, this huge constellation in the sky that is full of different stars and specks, you can just think of different personalities. But you also have that. That's where I was at. Is talking about your natal chart, your placement when you moved through the portal into, yes, your mother's portal and the portal of like the gateway into Earth and her field. You had to go through a portal, and that's physically you came through your mother, but also through this portal through the field of Gaia. And in that exact moment, you have your natal chart, which I do feel is your personal constellation of yourself that tells the story of who you are and how each planet has its influence upon you, because that's how this system works. Like the solar system, how the system works is like each planet has their own archetypal expression, and where that placement is within your chart kind of determines your personality, your identity. It doesn't completely define you, but it does have influence over you. And so with me and what I teach, what I reveal, what I help show is how, like similar to astrology with the planets, I do that with the stars. Like, because there's the different, like, especially the ones that are closest to us. There's a feather floating literally by my window. How, like, I'll just use myself for example. So I'm very deeply connected to Arcturus, and I feel like that's my soul fam. But if you look at my chart, literally Arcturus is right there at the portal point for when I entered Earth. And I look deeply polarized within my field. Like I literally create. I'm a triangle. Like I just feel like I'm a pyramid of kind of this side. Anyways, all right, not going to get into my natal chart, but just to use that as an example. Whereas Arcturus was very much there in my portal space of probably the portal that I came through in coming here, and that's why I connect most deeply to them. They're very easy for me to tune into. Like so, I feel like you can use the example of like a radio, where like whichever frequency that has the clearest connection to, because you can go through each dial and they're static, 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 and then you have a very clear channel because for whatever reason I don't understand the mechanics of that, but I do understand frequency, and I feel like I am most attuned to Arcturus. But that doesn't mean that I can't also attune myself to other aspects in the sky. It's just that's the one most native to myself. Anyways, I'm getting off on that too much. Okay, so where even was I? Because I feel like another part of Arcturus is we're a little gone with the wind sometimes. Um, so, okay, so I was talking about polarity. That's really the whole basis understanding of the collapse of this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and reveal, so you don't have to wait till the end, of what I mean by collapse. So I feel like a lot of us feel like the collapse of the systems, whether it's political systems, financial systems, education systems, the medical systems, all the systems, right? All the systems at play right now that are keeping us on this rat race of where we're just feeding those systems. What I've learned through embodiment is really what's so interesting, and it's all connected. Those systems, how they feed on us is through our nervous system and the conditioning that it has kind of like plugged into our nervous system to keep us thinking that those are the systems that are needed for survival, because that's the whole key to keeping us in line is to threaten our survival, because humans are afraid to die, which it's not that they're afraid to die, it's just you would rather not, you kind of want to be here. But like if they can threaten your survival and really, really threaten your security with your money, and like if you don't, like saying for instance, like, well, I don't have to give you examples, you probably know. Like if you don't abide by the rules of the system, then you're probably not going to have money. You're not going to be knowledgeable enough to make it in the world to be able to afford proper living conditions. So all of it is just systems that keep our nervous system in a fight, flight, or freeze, to think that our whole livelihood is connected to the systems that are trying to remain in control. But everything is collapsing, not just the system. So I'm going to show you something. The systems that we're all waiting to collapse, which are doing it right before our very eyes. But I want to reveal to you the frequencies, the energies behind the collapse that is creating the collapse. And it's actually so beautiful and so poetic. And it does have to do with Orion, the Orion Wars that are, like I said, reverberating into this experience. So if you are connected, I feel like you may, if you're connected or been in the online space, because I don't want to really get into the Galactic Wars or the Orion Wars, but it's all to do with polarity. I'll just talk about the frequency energy of it. It's all to do with polarity. Obviously, that is the whole experience that we have been shown here on planet of the Earth is deep polarity. So, but what's beautiful, and here's the like I said, the poetic part about it, is we've been born into this experience, into this reality of complete amnesia, but you have always been the breath of fresh air. You have always been like the life of the party, or that one person that's a little bit different, whether you are the black sheep, what I like to call the rainbow goats of the family, of the community. You're just that something different. You add that sparkle, you add that zest to wherever you are. I'm going to just tell you right now, that was your purpose. That's your mission. Your mission is to understand that that is your superpower, that you are adding flavor to this bland world, this world that has gotten too okay with having a cuisine that you just pop in the microwave that's easy, convenient, and has zero nutrition. You have been this, let me show you how to cook something really nice that is both nourishing and pleasureful. You know what I mean? Like you have given the world flavor. So if you are searching for meaning, purpose, and mission in your life, you know that that's you. So congratulations. Like if this is the first time you've arrived at being like, yes, I've added flavor to the world, then you've done your job. You can rest now and now you can allow for the collapse. because the collapse happens through you. The collapse happens when you no longer live in polarity. Then that's when the wars can end because that's all that the war is. And I'm going to use this example. I don't want to use the example of negative and positive because that creates a judgment within our human mind. But I'm going to use emotions, grief and joy. I feel like grief is like the um, lowest state of feeling because I feel like that is the initial core wound of all of us. And grief can look like different things. So within grief, you have like abandonment issues. Within grief, you have um, this sense of you don't belong, this sense of, well, honestly, there's so many. Like, I feel like every type of negative aspect comes from the initial core wound of grief, which is the core wound, I feel like, of everything in the galaxy except for Source itself. So that core wound goes back to your galactic self. It's even going to exist within the fifth dimensional space, by the way, because anything outside of the unified field of source is going to feel some sort of degree of grief. But within this experience, we feel grief so intensely that we can get lost in that experience and think that we are separate, to think that we are only human and we have to search for something outside of us to bring into us to feel fulfilled. So within this experience, we are given the depth capacity to bring such a negative polarity into the light. That is our gift as humans. Like that's, I think, why we're called human, is taking all of these different colors and aspects of ways of being and bringing them together within that spectrum. Because when you bring all of the shades of colors together, it creates this platinum illuminate of this brilliant, bright light. But it is taking everything in between, bringing them together to then come back into wholeness. Like that's what we can do here as humans. So there is no starseed versus human because your human is your superpower. And you understanding that is the collapse because you can take grief, the most intense, sad, suffocating feeling, and still feel the depth and love and beauty of nature around you, of life around you. I mean, it may have taken your whole healing journey to get to that point, which congratulations. If you're here, then I know that you have suffered through so much to be able to allow yourself to shine this brightly. It hasn't been an easy journey. So if any of this point is taking away from the intensity of the hurt that it felt to get here, I'm not, because that sucked. So I'm not trying to make light of the situation because I know how disheartening the journey can be, how hurtful and tragic the journey can be. However, the collapse is understanding. Like I said, I'm going to take a negative and put the term grief on it. I'm going to name it. And then also with the positive, I'm going to name it joy. And so, and then them together creates love, right? So I will just say grief plus joy equals love. So when you're able to take this negative polarity of grief, this deep separation where you feel like you don't belong, you feel like you've been abandoned. Like I said, that's a wound that literally is carried out through every galactic space. They feel it. But also the higher in the aspects, it's the more that it is collapsed because it's the closer it is to the source point. I hope that makes sense. If not, let me know. Okay, so here within this space, we can take grief, feel it on every level. But I feel like where we're at now, I feel like I can speak for all of us. And if not, then this is where I am going to invite you to be in the community to where you can feel both at the same time. Because, like I said, that's the collapse we're looking for. And I'm going to probably say this over and over again because I get off track and to really drill it into home. When you're able to feel this deep sense of lostness and be within the forest of darkness, but see the wonder and feel the joy, that's the collapse. That's in this immense amount of love for every bit of the experience where it is able to collapse and through you. Because we are the shift. You are already an ascended being that has volunteered to go within the depths where love and joy have been lost and bland meals have become acceptable, where you're like, no, 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 no. I'm going to go there and share my flavor because these people need to expand their palate of light, of depth, of taste, of pleasure, of joy, of desire, to desire something new, to know that they can. And I know in a lot of like I think even don't quote me, but I think within like the Buddhist or the monk community, or there is like a spiritual path that tries to transcend desire itself. But, and I went down that and I'm like, ugh, no, I like desiring things because in that desire, I feel like I can utilize the grief, not getting lost in the lack of it, but utilizing that depth of wanting, that depth of desire to create new pathways into what I desire because each desire is just a desired state of experience. It's a frequency, it's an energy that you long to have. And within the grief, you can use that as fuel to forge a new path into whatever it is that you want to go. And honestly, I feel like that's another gift of ours is foraging new paths through the forest through it to show that there's no fear to go through something, the unknown, to go through something that is dense and dark, because you know that you are the light that shines a new pathway through, a new pathway home. That's what all of us are, a new pathway home. That way, humans or people that don't really have an understanding like we do have choices to make whether they want to go this path or this path or this path because their paths have been shut off. But we come with our flavor, with our zest, with our drive through desire to get back home. We have foraged through the forest, many different pathways home to allow them to have a buffet of choices of which path they want to take to go back home. You're giving them a chance of where maybe they have been caught up in karmic loops over and over and over again to find a new way out, to reveal a higher sense of self, a new sense of desire, because you've given them something through just living through your authentic self, a taste for what is possible for them. That's the whole point. And so when we can remove polarity, and not even just remove it by denying it, but move through it by understanding that we can be both. The grief of, because like even it doesn't matter how enlightened we are, we're still going to feel a little homesick. But that's still just a calling for a next level of self to be brought into this experience. And when we can understand that, we increase our baseline of the depth each time. We increase our vastness. We increase the ability, our reach. And within that reach, because every time that we remember who we are, we bring more of home to us, sends out that wave. And the more vast that we become in that, the more reach that we have to touch the ends of the earth. Like, and I know I don't really know the ratio, but I know for every one of you can outweigh 10,000 or more asleep. So within this war, for every one of you can outweigh the density of 10,000 people that don't understand it, that are still in separation. I don't want to say asleep people because I don't, like I said, I want to remove the us versus them. The ones that just haven't remembered yet. Okay, so that's a little, so let's go back here. So I feel like right now we're in this new wave of awakening, and it is collapse energy. But I just want to invite you, instead of looking external for systems to collapse, what's happening truly is on the inside of you, where your nervous system is no longer attached to the external systems. and you're living more freely, more authentic, authentically through a non-dualistic lens because you can hold both without separation. You can bring both polarities, grief and joy, of the experience, understanding that it is magnificent and beautiful. And that creates a deeper unconditional love because you're no longer identifying yourself by whatever color you are that day. Whether it's, like I said, going back to cuisines, whether it's spicy, full of rage. That was me last year, full of rage. Because my entire life I was so afraid of expressing it because I thought that when I was identified, I was like, that makes me a bad girl. I'm like, no, I'm a good girl. I want to be a good girl. That was my whole thing. It's like I just wanted to be what people want. I wanted people to think that I was pure and innocent. But in that was my shadow because obviously I am pure and innocent. Like in a way through the source lens. Sure, I go through shit, I've done shit, I stir up shit, but that doesn't make me less of pure and innocent because that's my birthright. But I just have flavor. So sometimes I bring a little zest to the conversation where it's a little tangy and bitter for people to swallow. But also, it still expands a palate. It still allows people to experience a new way, and that maybe then they can choose if they want to whatever. I'm not going to go down the path, but do you get the examples I'm giving here? Or if you want to add a little spice, a little cayenne pepper, burn your blood a little bit through your expression of what you feel is an injustice, because I feel that's all that it is. Anything that is of an opposite is just showing the shadow sense, because that's what this experience is. It's a revealing of a shadow, because if we are the light, what we see is the shadow. So I'll give you an example. What I thought for the longest time, my rage, my shadow was bad. I'm like, no, I can't be that. I can't be mad. I can't be mad because I'm love and light. But no, really, the rage was showing to me what I felt was injustice still in the world. But also, like I said, I went through a whole period of understanding what truly the collapse meant. So then I thought it was me versus the injustice, where I had to stand up for it, which, yes, there is a way to do it. Each of us have a different way of, of, mm, I'll just say, dealing with our injustices that we feel, because there are passions that we hold towards things. Like, excuse me, like a lot of people are passionate about animals. Like they want to end animal cruelty. Like what burns their blood is an injustice for animals, and like maybe like with the cos I'll just use this example, like cosmetics who use animals as test subjects. So then the people that get really, really rageful about to the cosmetic community, um, and I'm trying to see where this is going. Um, so the people who are super duper rageful, which rage is just because you feel an injustice for what you're passionate for, because they're passionate about animals, the injustice is through these cosmetics that's doing experiments on them. But instead of burning it all down, because obviously cosmetics is like a fun thing to play with within this community, but also they can do it in a different way. So these people who are passionate about animals are just being like, you don't have to like share your cosmetic whatever with the world through animals. There's a different way. That's all that we're doing. I hope that that makes sense. We're just shining a light that you don't have to do it in a barbaric way, because I feel like on earth right now, or what we've seen, what we were born into, is seeing people utilize emotions and expressions of self in a very barbaric way, like shooting down people that you don't agree with instead of trying to just understand each other. Like you can agree to disagree. And then we have energetic boundaries, which we understand that to be through resonance rather than just like throwing stones at each other. It's just recognizing the difference in each other and just letting it be. Okay, so now I'm just getting really off subject. Okay, so the whole moral of this conversation, I hope that I have touched on the point, is the collapse is here. And it is very much in parallel with the Orion Wars, which all that it is a collapse of polarity where you no longer feed into one or the other, but you understand both exist. That creates a truer, more unconditional love that truly frees first you within your nervous system. And then that ripples out, that sends out a wave into the field around you to allow for the collapse to unfold in the timeline that you choose, because the collapse is going to show up differently for everyone based upon which timeline they most resonate with. Because, yes, we are in a collective space, but also within a very, very um, personal experience as well, because it's all through the lens of the perceiver. So that's how we live in our own reality within this collective space. How you perceive the collapse is going to be up to you. Once you hold a higher understanding, then it can't be conditional upon how you feel. Does that make sense? So I'm going to leave it at that, to just invite you in this new way of understanding the collapse of polarity, where the ending of the war that I feel is just rippling within our world. So anyway, stay tuned for next time, where I'm going to talk about how we can even shift from a new earth and give it a new name. For I feel there's a frequency that's wanting to be born through us, and I will share that next time.